Simon.
Hey, Simon.
Hello, Simon.
Hey, Simon.
What's up, Simon?
How you doing?
Hello. Hey, Simon. It's Skylar. How you doing?
Hello, Simon. Hello.
Hey,
Hey there.
Simon.
Hello, Simon.
This is Conversations with Storytellers, a podcast of wisdom, thoughts, and folk and fairy tales from our community, and I am your host, Simon Brooks. This is a meeting with professional storytellers. I know there are many places to be, and I'm so glad that you're here. Amy Douglas and I met online during the COVID pandemic about 5 years ago, and then I went to visit her on a recent trip to the UK. We got on really well, and I felt that people out there really need to hear her voice and know more about her. Amy was introduced to storytelling at a very young age. She was telling stories to strangers by the time she was 14, and after college and a career in colour polymer, moved to her true passion of storytelling. Amy was part of the initial team that set up Festival of the Edge in Shropshire, and has worked in radio and has met some incredible people who she has worked with and mentored under. Please welcome Amy Douglas. Amy Douglas, welcome to Conversations with Storytellers.
Thank you very much. Hello, I'm delighted to be here.
This might be an interesting conversation because we've been chatting already for like 10 minutes, and so I might edit some of the stuff that we just spoke about and put it on this side of it.
That's fine. Yeah. And I have to just apologise for having a slightly dirty laugh and being slightly huskier than usual. So I'm just coming the right side of a cold, but still perfectly capable of talking and hopefully not sounding too bad.
No, you don't sound too mad at all. You sound great. So I think we're all good. So Amy, for those of the listeners that have no idea who you are, you're a storyteller and you're in Shropshire in the UK.
I was going to say they probably won't know where Shropshire is either.
Probably not. So how can we describe Shropshire? A little bit left of Birmingham?
It's a bit left field of everywhere, really. I mean, yes, certainly where I live in Bishop's Castle. Shropshire is very rural. It's in the middle of Britain. It's right on the border with Wales. So I'm part of the Welsh Marches. So I'm in England, but kind of that strange border country. So I'm on the English side of the Welsh border.
Yeah.
So we are about as far from the sea as you can get in Britain, which is about just over an hour. I mean, kind of nowhere is. We're not a massive island.
No, we're not. So, Amy, when you were a kid growing up, did you have parents or aunts and uncles or grandparents that would read you stories, tell you folk and fairy tales, or was this something that you discovered later on?
So I don't really remember that so much. I mean, like my mum stayed home with me till I was 4, and then we both went to school together. So she went back to school as a teacher and I went as a child when I was 4. And so, I mean, there've been loads of stories and she spent lots of time with me before then, most of which I don't really remember, which is very sad for her. But I think I do have obviously that foundation. And I mean, what I really remember is going to sleep every night listening to story tapes. I always really loved stories. I always really loved reading, but I had like favourite tapes that I would listen to with things like The Reluctant Dragon and C.S. Lewis. And as I got a bit older, I just devoured fantasy books like David Eddings. And all of these books always had storytellers in them. And I used to go, what happened to all the storytellers? Where are they? And I didn't think that they actually existed anymore. And so when I discovered that they did, this was this wonderful door opening into another world. And then bizarrely, as I got into storytelling, then all the storytellers in my family came out of the woodwork. And then I realised that there was this whole heritage in my family that I just didn't know about beforehand.
Really?
So my great-granddad was actually a Scottish traveller who came down from Scotland, and then so my dad's side of the family are based up in Durham. So he was a travelling showman, and then my granddad, who I just idolised and adored all my life. I mean, he was just the best granddad. All the grandchildren kind of completely idolised him, and And he played the accordion, he sang loads of songs, he recited poetry and monologues and all kinds of stories. But we lived quite a long way away, so I saw a little bit of that when I went up, and certainly kind of like the dangling rhymes, sort of sitting on the lap rhymes and nonsense songs and stuff like that. I saw that, but I hadn't realised kind of that there'd been this big folk scene that he'd really been part of. And we used to have like the high level ranters would just go and hang out in the house and like all of this stuff. Like nobody told me any of this. And then my dad has always absolutely loved walking. And he did the scouts and everything else. And kind of when he was in his teens,
Mhm.
he used to jump on the train or a bus and he'd just go off hiking for the weekend. And so he would walk all day and then he'd end up in some pub and he'd talk to all the old boys and he'd ask them about the stories. And he had this book that he wrote down all of these stories that he'd heard from loads and loads of different people. And then, before he had me, lent it to one of the high level ranters, and that was it. So this book is just a myth on its own. I never got
Oh,
to see it.
no.
I know. And he
Oh
goes,
my
so,
God.
do you remember any of these stories? And it's like, oh, not really. Like he remembers obviously the feel of them and different characters, but not specific stories as such. So there's always been this interest in folklore and kind of this performing and in stories in my family, but I didn't know.
Wow. So how old were you when you discovered this side of your family and discovered storytelling and it was something that you wanted to do?
Um, well, both my parents had been folkies, and then as many people did, kind of, they just got into their work, and had both very busy work lives and me, and hadn't really been doing festivals or folk things for quite a long time. And then when I was about 12, 13, they started going to folk festivals again. So, which is where I discovered that storytelling still existed.
Okay.
Um, so we went to All Folk Around the Wrekin, which was our local folk festival just like a few miles down the road. And on that programme was a storytelling workshop with Taffy Thomas, which is where I found out. I went, oh, storytelling workshop. There wasn't any workshop element to it at all. It was Taffy was just telling stories. And it was mostly kids, I think, that turned up.
Right.
But I went up to him at the end and said, oh, how did you get to be a storyteller? And he kind of towered over me and leant down and went, why, do you want to? And maybe. And my mum always says, "Oh, you just came back and you were so full of it, and like this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life." And she kind of took it with a very, very large dose of salt, kind of. Um, but that was the first festival that we went to, and
Mhm.
we started going to more and more festivals, and then I got into storytelling and started doing more and more, and then it kind of because I was there doing it and that people were seeing me do it, then they started talking to me about it. Um,
Sure.
Yes, but so it wasn't it was sort of a gradual kind of drip thing, I think, after that.
That's really cool. And Taffy Thomas, for those people that may not know who Taffy Thomas is, he is a legend.
Legend.
Yeah,
Absolute living
absolutely.
legend.
Yeah, yeah. He they also invented the storytelling laureate so that Taffy could be the first one, right? I'm right saying that, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, and that I have to say, I mean, one of the reasons that I got into storytelling and I was able to is because we've been really lucky with some amazing Arts Council literature officers. So the West Midlands, particularly, because it's not been the same all over England and Britain at all. But I had an amazing arts officer who massively supported me and storytelling in Shropshire called David Hart. And then he was followed by Adrian Johnson.
That makes a lot
And
of sense.
Adrian was very much part of that process that got the storytelling laureate. Yeah, so basically so that Taffy could have it. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. I mean, that's and so who are your mentors when you started to like not just drip but pour?
So obviously it started with Taffy, and
Right.
Taffy has stayed there as a mainstay for ages. I mean, Taffy is brilliant. And one of Taffy's really real strength is taking storytelling out to people that haven't heard storytelling before, and really encouraging people to attend events, but also to become storytellers themselves. I mean, and he's been brilliant with me. But he introduced me to Mike Rust. He was just about to set up a storytelling club, and there really wasn't a lot of storytelling happening in Britain at that point. Well, in England at any rate. I mean, obviously, England, Wales, and Scotland have very different um, perspectives on things. And Northern Ireland is literally another country. Certainly, it's divided from us by water, so it's part of us.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not going to say anything. I would never dare to say that storytelling ever kind of receded in Northern Ireland, and but certainly in England, it hadn't really vanished, but it was very much it was hidden. You had to look hard to find it.
Right.
And the storytelling club down in London at that point, the Crick Crack Club, which was more performance than open mic or story rounds. So Mike was just about to set up a story round in on Wenlock Edge Inn, and so I had my 14th birthday sort of just before that started, which in those days was important because you weren't allowed to go to the pub until you were 14. Life has changed drastically since then, but in those days you had to be 14. So my dad started taking me, and so every month it would be. Taffy came to the first one to launch it, but Mike Rust and Richard Walker were the mainstays of that club, and there were quite a lot of nights when it was literally Mike, Richard, me, and my dad, and Mike and Richard would tell stories to each other, and I'd learn one new one, and I'd listen to them go backwards and forwards. And nights when the weather was good, get more people, and people came from quite a long way. They'd travel for an hour and a half, maybe even sometimes 2 hours, because there weren't any other storytelling clubs.
Wow. And these were people that were there to listen. Is that right? Or
well, to listen and to tell. So it was a story round. So you went round.
Okay.
If you wanted to tell a story, you could. If you didn't want to, you didn't have to.
Right. And how many people were there?
Well, so for the first one, there was quite a lot. Taffy came and quite a lot of the folkies and yes. But I mean, like, it wasn't that big a room. So when it was, it could feel like really full with 25 people in it. That was packed.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
And
maybe 30 if there was some people standing.
okay. And how many of those 25 to 30 people would tell stories, do you think?
Well, I mean, that was for the first one. So generally speaking, like when the weather was rubbish, there would be 4 of us. But usually kind of 8 to 15, I think, would be, about usual.
Okay, that's pretty good.
So you could get around, you can have 15 stories in a night, as long as you keep the time.
Right. That's awesome.
But my dad would never tell, you see. So my dad would always be one that didn't tell. So it'd always,
Really?
And he said the reason why was because he was a policeman. And he said, if it ever gets back, like, if I'm standing up in court and somebody, the lawyer kind of goes, oh, yeah, so DC Douglas, I hear that you're a storyteller, it's like all my evidence is just going to be down the pan.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a certain amount of standing back and letting me get on with it. He always said he was giving me a good head start.
Well, that was good of him. That's awesome. So you were 14, it was your birthday party, and then you got into doing there was this guy, Adrian.
I didn't have a party. I was far too cool for a party.
Oh, excuse me.
I mean, I might have gone with a mate to Alton Towers, which is
yes. Like Six Flags, yeah.
Yeah. Party.
Well, how did you get into it professionally? I mean, if you were doing this at 14, other than like a paper route, maybe have you had any other kind of job? Have you only done storytelling, or have you done other work as well? And how did you transition from like having your original job, whatever that may be, to full-time storyteller?
Okay, there's a lot of stuff in the middle of that.
Yeah, I imagine.
This may be a very long answer.
That's okay.
So I never thought it was going to be a job. It never occurred to me that would be a thing. It was a hobby. But because there weren't very many storytelling clubs and it's quite unusual, and people heard about the story club, and it might have only been like 8 to 15 people sat in a pub kind of telling stories in a circle, but it caught people's imagination. And so we had quite a lot of like Radio Shropshire wanting to talk to us, and the local paper wanting to come and talk to us, and then people heard about it and they asked us to come and do things at places. So we got asked to do old people's homes and schools and various other things. Obviously I was at school, so I couldn't do that much of it. But my school times were slightly different, so I could do sort of sometimes beginning or end of terms. And other storytelling clubs were starting to set up.
And what year was this about? Roundabout?
It was 1989.
Okay.
that Tales at the Edge started.
Okay.
Um, so so as other storytelling clubs were being set up, we quite often went to go and support them on their first night. So I met an awful lot of storytellers. I mean, like, because the scene was tiny. I mean, like, it's not exactly huge now,
Yeah,
but it was
yeah.
absolutely tiny. So I did get to meet most of the storytellers, and they were all interested in me because I was 14 and I was a girl. And actually, then most of the storytellers were men. And that's completely flipped now. So I think I would say there's many more women involved in storytelling than men. But in those days, it was the other way around, and there weren't very many that were under 40.
Right.
So
Right.
so I was memorable and encouraged because they wanted to have young people, they wanted to have new blood, they wanted to have youngsters, and they wanted to have more women in it. So I was in a very fortunate position from that point of view that everybody was really helpful, really encouraging. And I had a very patient dad who drove me all over the place. And so there were things like, because I was unusual, like I had some really random and really brilliant things happen. So one of them was I was asked to do a story for Radio 5 Live, which involved us getting up at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning
Hmm.
into Cornwall, which was like about a 5 hour drive or something ridiculous,
Yeah.
Floyd's pub. Now, Keith Floyd was a celebrity chef, but also quite famous for drinking a lot. And he had his own pub in Cornwall. And so they were doing this Radio 5 Live special. Radio 5 does a lot of sports and things like that. So they were doing a special from Keith Floyd's pub and then invited me and they paid me. So I got £35 for doing the story and something like £110 travel. So, to get there. And so my dad was, kind of, well, he's quite excited about meeting Keith Floyd. He was up for an adventure. So we got up, pegged it all the way down to Cornwall. We got there, the camera crew and the radio crew were incredibly hungover. Kind of people were slowly kind of waking up and we're sort of sat there going, okay. And then this amazing, slowly this amazing spread appeared because it's Keith Floyd's pub. So sadly, I was vegetarian at the time. My dad was in absolute food heaven because there was this amazing fish, and sea fish and just like loads of food. The then captain of the rugby team and some of the members of the English rugby team were there. So my dad was just like, yeah, okay.
Oh my
You do
God.
storytelling. This is brilliant. Like, you can keep doing this. This is fine. And I mean, there was actually loads of people that he knew. And I was 16. I had no idea who anybody was. Because it was an older crowd. The Animals were there. And
Van?
the band. Yeah. So they performed Wild Thing. And the embarrassing thing was kind of like, because I didn't know when I was going to be on, and I was sort of sat there waiting and waiting and waiting. The moment they came to me, I'd gone to the bar for a glass of water. So it's like, our storyteller's gone to the bar. She's gone for a drink, and it's just like, oh, great. But yes, I mean, I got to do crazy things. I was just like some 16-year-old who went to a storytelling club, kind of once a month. I mean, I wasn't a professional storyteller at all, but I did get. I mean, that was an unusually amazing, but I did get some amazing things like that, and then I loved it and I wanted to get better. So I think I mentioned to you earlier about having the support the West Midland Arts gave storytelling in Shropshire. And we had just had this amazing literature officer, David Hart. He was watching me and obviously, I mean, at 16 as well, I got free festival tickets. So I loved going to folk festivals. So I wouldn't get paid, but I'd get, I was supporting myself like to spend my summer holidays going to lots of festivals through storytelling.
Wow.
And so that was my job at that point, and it was very, it was cool. There was also a real thing actually at 16 of the atmosphere in England changed. So up until that point, telling stories and being into folk music was the kiss of death. I mean, it was the most uncool thing that you could do. I mean, it really, like, it wasn't the sort of thing that you admitted to at school. And then I went into sixth form and just everything changed. So like the Levellers rose to popularity, Chumbawamba around, like world music suddenly became a thing. And I'd started going to like a regular Roots thing on a Thursday evening because trying to tell the story in order is a bit tricky. But so for my work experience, I'd done my work experience with Richard Walker, who was one of the two people that was involved in Tales at the Edge. So the club was called Tales at the Edge, and then me, Mike, and Richard started going out as a threesome, Tales from the Edge. And Richard was known as also worked as Mogsy, so he did children's entertainment at festivals, but was wanting to do more storytelling, wanted to do more adult storytelling. And it was at that point when, you know, Taffy was on the same sort of place of trying to encourage festivals to have storytellers do storytelling for adults, that it wasn't just for kids.
Right.
So it was a slow burn of trying to persuade people that, you know, storytelling was a thing that adults could do and would benefit from and was an amazing thing. And so Richard did all sorts of little bits and pieces. And one of the things that he did was he was the folk presenter for Radio Shropshire. So I did a 2-week work experience with him. And that was the point when we really became proper friends. Because although I'd known him for a couple of years, it was like once a month doing a story round and then going to the odd event.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't been doing so much of because I was that bit younger. And so there was this thing of going, I've committed to spending 2 weeks with this 40-year-old man that I don't really know that well. This could go very badly. And actually, we had an amazing time, and he let me do the set list for the folk programme. And from that point on, I carried on working on the folk programme, and I would be on the phones and be part of it, and also started going out, learning about voice, learning about recording, learning about editing, and sort of doing little interviews and things for the folk programme.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, which is great, you know, 16.
Yeah.
How fantastic is that?
Awesome. Yeah.
And,
it's like a dream
then,
for me.
I know. Well, I mean, obviously it wasn't paid, but, but it was a brilliant volunteer position. But then on Thursday, it was on Thursday night, so it was 8 to 10. But then that was when at the Buttermarket was the Roots night. So we'd go down from the folk programme to the Roots night. He would, you know, and they'd have amazing world-class bands that weren't necessarily that well known. You know, things like Shugal Nifty, the Oyster Band, Fluke, Dervish, you know, amazing bands.
Wow. Yeah.
So then I entered the sixth form, and suddenly kind of, you know, folk became a bit cooler. And I knew all the bands, you know, kind of when other people started coming down to Roots Club, it's just like, oh yeah, I'm just here hanging out with the band, you know. No. I've known them for years.
You must have been the coolest kid in sixth form college or sixth form.
Well, I went to being quite cool. Yeah, I certainly managed to get to be quite cool, having been completely not cool remotely, kind of like, yeah. Just the nerd in the corner.
Wow, that's brilliant. So
I think one of my crowning triumph was because they had like this box in the record library. So all the bands would send in like, you know, EPs.
Yeah.
Like the trial ones, you know, try and get played on the radio. And so there's a box of discards that you could just take. And so I used to take a selection of anything that looked interesting and take it home and play it and decide if I liked it or not. And there was one that I absolutely really loved, and I, you know, loved it enough to take into school and play in the sixth form common room and go, you have to listen to this. This is amazing. And they all went, oh, it's Amy's crap music again. It's Amy's really rubbish music. And it was Radiohead. And it was just like, so I had that moment of going, rubbish was it? You're all listening to it now, aren't you? Oh yeah, all big fans now, aren't we? Amy's rubbish music. Thank you very much.
That's incredible. That's pretty
and
cool.
Not petty at all, you know, not small-minded.
No, absolutely not.
Small wins. I'm sorry, what was the original question? I've gone off. I will, yeah.
So you were a radio producer, and then how did you get from being radio producer to...
Oh yeah, well that was a volunteer thing, right? So yeah, we're talking about jobs. So then so I did my A levels, but I had this amazing West Midlands Arts literature officer called David Hart, and David Hart had been an amazing supporter of storytelling. By the time I got to my A levels, Tales at the Edge had gone from a very little club to Tales from the Edge, me, Mike and Richard going out and around. And then we had this crazy idea to start a festival. So we started Festival at the Edge.
I didn't know that you started that.
Well, I mean, I was 16, so to be fair, I had a smaller role, and it was maybe more my dad, Mike, and Richard. I was sort of listed as being the minute secretary because I took the minutes, which was hilarious because I was taller than Mike and Richard by the time I was 16 anyway. So, so yes, the minute secretary. Yeah, so yeah, we started Festival at the Edge. That was 1991. So when I was 15, just no 16, my birthday's at the same time. So like and actually at the third Festival at the Edge, because me and Richard shared the same birthday, we're both born on the 12th of July. And so we had a joint 50th and 18th birthday party on the Sunday night at Festival at the Edge because we had all the marquees up. So yeah, we had a joint birthday party. And I mean, that says something for storytelling because I don't think that there's many walks of life where you'd have an 18-year-old and a 50-year-old who really wanted to have a party together and a lot of the same people.
Sure, yeah.
Anyway, so David Hart had supported the club, had supported the festival, had supported lots of things that were going on. And then he decided it'd be a really good idea to have a West Midlands Arts storytelling apprentice, which you did have to apply for. But basically, I mean, it was written for me. Bless it. I don't know if anybody else applied, but I got it. And it was for £1,000, which isn't a lot to live on for a year. But it gave me the idea of, okay, that is what I would like to do. I'm going to take a gap year. I'm going to do a storytelling apprenticeship. And I had to supplement it with a lot of money. So I worked like a demon, kind of Wilco's and at a pub. I was, working all day and then literally going to the pub and working all night for the first part of the year to get extra money. But I basically phoned up lots of storytellers, most of whom I'd met. But I mean, even if I hadn't met them, they'd heard of me because I was this, strange teenager going around doing storytelling, and there wasn't really many of those. So, in fact, there was me. That was it. So, I'm going, please, can I sleep on your floor and follow you around for a bit? And everybody said yes, apart from one who said, I'm a single man living in a one-bedroom flat in London. You're very welcome to come on some of my gigs with me. No, you can't sleep on my floor.
Yeah.
Fair play.
Yeah, fair play indeed.
Yeah. So I spent a year with lots of storytellers. And I also, in that year, I got to go to the National Storytelling Festival in Tennessee, which was amazing. And just like, I mean, the scene in America was so different to what we had over here. It was just incredible. And I got some advice from Pat Ryan, and he introduced me to some people in Chicago. So instead of going to Tennessee, I flew to Chicago and got picked up by a librarian who was organising a coach trip down to Tennessee. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, if I'm going to spend 2 days travelling on a coach with a load of people interested in storytelling, hopefully I'll have somebody to hang out with at the festival. And, if I can't meet somebody in 2 days on a coach, then, I'm failing. So, so...
Who was the librarian?
It's really, really awful, and I can't remember her name.
I'll cut that bit out.
I feel so bad about the whole trip because what happened was I came back. I'd had this amazing 3 weeks. It was my first time being away from home, and it was kind of quite full on. I came home and I got almost the way home. I was at my local train station, like 3 miles away from home, and I was just shattered. I was so knackered. And I kind of was dozing, waiting for a taxi, and somebody nicked my handbag. And it had my diary in with all the addresses of all the people that I was going to write and thank.
Oh.
And it had all my notes, for being away in America. And it was just like, so there's loads of people that I just couldn't get in contact with and thank. And I lost touch with loads of people because it was just, the internet wasn't there. When in
England, it wasn't. No, you're right. Yeah.
It was that year would have been when I was 18. So yeah, it was 92.
Yeah.
Yeah, 92. So like getting, finding people and getting addresses and everything, you forget now what it was like then. And actually, if you lost a book with everybody's contacts in, it was really difficult to get that back or track people down. Like, how did you do it?
Yeah.
So
you start with one person if you remember their address, right, and say, "Do you know so and so?"
Yeah, and a lot of them didn't. So Yeah, it was, and
Wow.
I also, and there was a point where I kind of was on this year when I was traveling all of that year as well. So doing all of that, and with the time difference, because I couldn't, you know, I didn't have their phone number, so I mean, it was like going back to Pat and then trying to get hold of this woman, and it was just really, yeah, it was really tricky. And maybe I could have made more of an effort, but I was 18 and traveling, so I didn't. I just got
Right,
really,
right. Wow. So you mentioned, we've met before because when I was in the UK visiting my mum, I made a point of coming to see you. Um, so you mentioned that you mentioned like before we started this conversation, you mentioned Janet Denegro. How did you when did you meet her? And how did that relationship start?
So that year when I went to the national,
Hmm.
um, I wangled a free ticket because of my I didn't tell them quite how small and parochial the Radio Shropshire Folk Programme was, um, and uh, and so I managed to get a press pass, which was amazing, and did. Like you do, And so I got some interviews, and I got to talk to people, and obviously I was there as well, kind of from Festival at the Edge. So we wanted to have some international people, and we were going funding to try and get some international people. So I was looking for people to book, to come to Festival at the Edge, and I saw lots of people that I really loved, but it was also finding somebody that would want to come to Festival at the Edge that we could afford, and that would work in England at that point. So, there were people that I adored that I wasn't sure that England was ready for, because I have to say it is getting better. English storytelling can be a bit sniffy about personal stories. And
Yes.
there's definitely a snobbish side to English storytelling about personal stories, and much more into traditional, and uh, yeah. I think there's a feeling that it's not really proper to talk about your own stuff, which is getting better. But it was seen as kind of maybe being therapy on stage, and um,
I feel that way about some of the moth stories.
yeah,
That there is that element to it, but there's also some, well, like taking a step back as a British person that's lived in the States for 30 years. I think there's an element of truth to that, but there's also this. I think there's some real power in the personal narrative, which
huge.
when I first saw it, I would never have said that.
When I went to America, it was my first experience of American storytelling, and I went to the National, where you do get the cream of the you get people who really know their stuff, who've been doing it for a long
Yeah,
time, ultimately professional, and completely brilliant. I was utterly blown away by Donald Davis and Elizabeth Ellis.
yeah.
It was the 21st year of the National that year. So they had 21 tellers, and it was kind of favourite tellers over that time. And I was utterly, utterly blown away. But I don't think that Elizabeth Ellis would necessarily been that comfortable doing all of the journeying to England and the amount of travel that would be involved, and the way that she would be treated, because we just don't have the money over here. So, kind of certainly when I was starting out storytelling, yeah, so for Fest at the Edge, I'm sure we would have put her up in a nice B&B or something. But, I did a lot of sleeping on people's floors or spare bedrooms, and,
Yeah,
kind of, I don't think that's how she would be treated in America.
no,
And
no,
so it wasn't about like who was the best storyteller, it was who would be the best fit for England. And so
right.
the person that I recommended and thought would really work was Dan Kedding,
Yes.
who did a really good mix of traditional stories and personal stories. So I thought he would be a really good introduction to an English audience for personal storytelling, and that way. Also, storytelling was really new, and we were trying to get people into folk festivals and trying to arrange a tour. So
Mhm.
the fact that he was also a musician opened the doors much more easily into Sidmouth Folk Festival and to Whitby Folk Festival. At that point in time, he was one of the younger storytellers. So he probably would cope, with a bit more of the travelling and the fact that accommodation could maybe be slightly more rough and ready. Um, so, and he was a really perfect choice. So he was fantastic, and I really liked him. I really got on with him, and so that was the beginning of a lifelong friendship for me with Dan Cadding. And so, answer to how I got to know Janice Del Negro was that when I went back to the States to stay with Dan, is that Dan lived quite close to Janice, and he introduced me to Janice, and Janice took me out for my first martini.
Okay, there you go.
long, long answer.
So Dan introduced you to Janice, and then there's a very strong storytelling. I mean, when you were over there, there would have been a really strong storytelling unit in and around that area because there was
Yeah.
Jim May was in that area, Megan Wells is in that area, right?
Yeah, I didn't actually meet Megan at that point. I met Megan later through Janice, and it's really weird because I consider Megan to be quite a good friend now, but I actually haven't ever met her in person. So, no, I haven't. No. And Jim May I knew of before I went over, and Jim May wasn't around when I went over. I can't remember why, but I mean, also, Illinois is probably bigger than Britain. I mean, it feels like it takes a long time to get places.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
States, for somebody who's got like a small island mentality. But Jim May had been over because he'd done quite a lot of stuff with Taffy, and Taffy was telling Spooky Gables, which was one of those stories that went like wildfire around the British scene, which is based on the Boo Baby Girl that obviously Jim May had done and put in a book, and it's his story. So he got referenced quite a lot because of that story. But I did meet a lot of storytellers, and there was a really strong scene in Illinois and quite a few festivals. So, I mean, I went back to with Dan and I did met lots of amazing people. So, I did the River Feather, the Fox Valley
Yes.
Festival,
Yeah,
Fox
yeah.
Valley River Festival, which is an amazing festival with a huge amount of mosquitoes. I went to a concert on the Saturday night. I mean, I thought I was covered up. I was completely covered in clothes, and I was staying with this really beautiful woman, Julie, and her partner. So she was on one side of me, her partner was on the other side of me, and he got a bite, she got two. They looked at my back the next day, and it was just covered in welts. Like they counted over 70 bites. I mean,
Wow.
these mosquitoes had just like drilled through my clothes. So the next day at festival, I was like a bear, just like leaning on all the trees, kind of scratching. Um, but that was a fantastic festival with a lot of young people at it as well, because obviously I was quite young then. Just amazing clog dancers and musicians, um, and just I mean, and I think that was one of the first times as well when I kind of was on that left side of American politics and seeing a very different side to what we see on the news, a kind of much more of the broad spectrum of what America can be. And I think that's been one of those things that I've kind of had a bit of a lifelong love affair with America, and I love, I haven't been to many parts of it, but the bits that I've met, I've just really loved, and kind of the diversity of people. And I think in England, people talk about Americans not getting irony, and I think Illinois would call themselves like, well, the people that I met there called Illinois the sarcasm capital of America, and
Yeah,
that they really got irony, and I found I had some kindred spirits there,
yeah.
and on the ground, you always get such a different picture of a place than you do on the news, and we seem to get a very
Mhm.
biased view sometimes of the States, I think, in Britain. And I don't know who's pushing that and where it's coming from, but the reality always seems very different.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right there. So we talked a little bit about your first paying gig, but when did you make that switch from what was the job that you had right before you left storytelling?
Okay, so I went to uni after my storytelling apprenticeship was a gap year,
Right.
and then I did a degree in colour chemistry. Um, And after my degree in colour chemistry, um, I had some really rubbish jobs, but I did get a job working at the university for an American company, funnily enough. And at that point, because it's actually the full title of my degree, because the last year you could either go into colour chemistry and dyeing or colour chemistry and polymers, and I went into colour chemistry and dyeing. I was working. Do you remember the record once, read many CDs, like they were, so you could
No,
record on them, and they had like a bluey green dye on the back.
no, I don't.
Okay, so you never recorded CDs.
Oh, I have recorded. Oh, so yes, okay.
But if you take a C, yeah, like if you wanted to record a CD,
Yeah,
they used to have like on the backside they were kind of like a green, blue, shiny.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so what I was working on was the DVD equivalent. Okay, so because because of the difference in wavelength, if you've got a red dye instead of a blue-green one, you can fit a lot more information on, which you need for a video instead of audio. So what my job was to try and find a dye with a high refractive index that could take all of the information and stabilize it. Because obviously if it breaks down and decomposes, then you lose all your information. So it's got to be stable. You won't have ever seen those on the market because my job wasn't going well. So what I discovered doing that job is that although I absolutely love science, and for me, people think science and story is a really weird combination, but for me, it's about questing, and it's about trying to understand the world. It's about trying to understand how people work. It's about asking questions, and it's about how it's about looking for answers. And I think that science is about how, and that storytelling is about, and religion are about why. And when you're looking at science, you have this whole amazing history of kind of, people asking for questions and the results and this pattern, this jigsaw that's slowly coming together to make this beautiful, amazing picture of the universe. Working as the lowly research chemist, your job is to do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, really methodically, look at your results, and go, they're a bit inconclusive, let's start again. Particularly because I work with colour, you end up in a lab that has no natural light because lots of dyes
Gotcha. Yeah.
they decomposed under natural light. And it's being on your own. So you're usually working on your own and not part of the team. And putting me in a dark, in a room with no natural light on my own, doing the same thing again and again and again methodically for a day I'm not that person. So I didn't do so well on that. I started to go, I was doing longer and longer hours and getting worried about my results and kind of going a bit, I'm somebody who works through, I think aloud, I think talking to other people. And so it wasn't really suiting me. And but the company that I was working for were just amazing and they were so lovely. And they actually paid for me to go out to the States to go and see their labs over there and to talk to them and to meet them. And while I was over there, I said, do you mind if I take some holiday since you paid for me to come out here and go and see some friends? And they said, yeah, it's fine, because they were a lovely company. And so I went to see Dan Kedding. And what I did was that him and his wife Tandy were working, and so they would go out in the day. And as soon as they'd gone, Dan's dog kind of like, there would just be this nose that would appear around the side of the door, because I'd stay in bed and just let him get out of the way, with this sort of toy dangling from it and this kind of like little look going, do you want to come and play? And and I'd just like head down into his library. I'd play with Jack the dog, and I'd look at Dan's library and his books. And I had a week of being really far from the situation to go, what do I want to do with my life? Where do I want to go? And I went, this is my chance. I don't have a partner. I don't have children. I don't have anybody reliant on me. If I'm ever going to try storytelling full time, it has to be now, and I have to go for it. And I don't think I can get any better as a storyteller without putting more time into it. I'm either going to be try and be a really good storyteller and put all my time into it, or just like go, it's going to be a hobby and it's going to be a bit of thing on the side for the rest of my life. And I just decided, it's more kind of like it was, how would I feel about not having storytelling in my life? How would I feel about not doing it on a regular basis? How would I feel about not that always being part of who I am? And I went, yeah, I can't do that. Whereas when I thought about that with how would I feel about not being a research chemist, I was like, yeah, I'm fine with that. Even though I spent the last however many years working towards this, it's like, that's fine. But I needed that week, like really far away from everything, and kind of, and in some, it was ridiculous because actually I only like sat in a library. Like I didn't actually need to be on the other side of the world to do it, but I did at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot to be said about separating yourself from what's going on, and just being away from everything. Yeah. And
once I made that decision, I was excited, kind of. Yeah. I think it's right.
I bet.
Even though it was like, okay, I'm going to have no money and no security and no sick pay for the rest of my life.
Well, at least you have the National Healthcare Service.
It's hard. It's hard to make a living as a storyteller, and there are very few people that work solely as a storyteller. And I would say I do work solely as a storyteller, but I've got lots of little different bits as part of that job to make up a living. So I work for the Welsh Government. I work as a creative agent and I have worked as a creative practitioner. I mean, that's a whole other conversation, which is really, really, really exciting about Lead Creative Schools and their creative curriculum that they brought into schools, which I'm a huge fan of. So that's become quite a big part of my living at the moment.
Hmm.
Which, you have to be an artist to do that job. There's lots of artists, lots of different disciplines. And what I'm doing there is facilitating. I don't do a lot of, occasionally I'll do some storytelling as part of it, but actually it's much more my perspective as an artist that is in, and doing admin is what that is.
Hmm.
And I work for Bag Books, and Bag Books is sensory storytelling. And it's done in a very specific way. So you have, I could show you, it won't work on an audio, but what I didn't realise when I started to work for them was I would have to have a spare room, just like store all of the
Yeah,
books because
that's a
they're
very large
enormous.
box.
So yeah, they have like basically is a load of kind of I don't know, paper sizes are probably different for you on there. They're A3, so they're kind of, double, they're quite big boards.
Right. So,
And each board,
so A3 would be the closest to A3 that we would have over here would be letterhead, 2 pages of letterhead.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's double the standard size of what
Right.
you put in your printer usually.
Right.
And so each board will have like a smell or something to touch or a sound and use like a sentence worth of story. And it's a very prescribed and definite way of telling to people with PMLD, so physical mental learning difficulties.
Mhm.
And it's really successful and it works brilliantly. But it's not really me being a storyteller. It's using some of my storytelling skills. And I love it because it's immensely successful. I get to meet amazing people. And it is one of those, I shove a load of the boxes into the car the night before. There's no prep or mind preparation. I can turn up and I do it. So it's related to storytelling, but it's not my creating something that I want to say and taking it out into the world.
Right. Right.
So, and I think, and every other storyteller I know has things like that. They've got things that are related to storytelling that aren't necessarily. So a lot of people are, there's quite a lot of, what do you call them? Humanist, not preachers, but like they can need humanist services. So there'll be funeral directors or
Okay. Yeah.
wedding speakers, and so that might be part of their repertoire of what they do, part of their portfolio. Others are counsellors. I think the ones who only work at pure storytelling are few and far between, and a lot of those have partners that have a better paid job.
Gotcha. Yeah. So it's somewhat similar, but it's different. I think we have.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have.
Certainly a lot of but then most of those storytellers would call themselves storytellers, and that's their heart. That's the heart of what they do. That is their creative burn. That's what they're passionate about, and that passion and those skills then feed into all of the other things that they do.
Right. So how badly affected were a lot of the festivals in the UK over the last few years?
Oh, now that's that's a big question. Um, they were badly affected, and we have so we've had more and more festivals over the last since Festival at the Edge started. So Festival at the Edge was really kind of the first storytelling festival. And then sort of Beyond the Border came, and now there's kind of quite a lot of festivals, but they've all suffered. COVID has played into that, but they've all suffered
Yeah.
for different reasons.
Okay.
But maybe, I suppose, the thing that they've all suffered from is the fact that there isn't enough money to go into festivals, and so there's not enough paid support for admin running them. And I think
Gotcha.
at one point or another, they've fallen foul of not managing to keep up with the admin, or not getting enough funding bids in, or just people taking off the eye off the ball because they have a life other than the festival, and that other life is the one that where their family is and where they're making money is. Kind of like it's a whole economy that's run mostly by volunteers, and there seems to have been a bit of an arc where kind of there's been these festivals that have done really well and been amazing events, and then something has happened where they've just kind of fallen apart a bit.
That's too bad. One thing that
I mean, we have still got some, but yeah, they're not necessarily as big as they were. And I think, the other thing is things have a natural lifespan, don't they?
Yeah, they do. It's true. Although over in the States, the first thing that came to mind is like TV shows when you said that for some strange and bizarre reason. And over here, TV shows, they do not have a natural life cycle. They have an artificial one that they drag out for, because if we can make money from it, we'll still make it no matter how bad it becomes.
Well, there are new festivals that are starting. So like Nick and Emily are doing Stealing Thunder, and that's quite a new festival. It seems to do really brilliantly. There's the Settle Stories, which is kind of I mean, they're doing amazing stuff. It's just like because of my own personal life, I've kind of maybe not been doing festivals so much because I've been in family and kind of working in different areas that I haven't been particularly involved with Settle. And they've been going they kind of they're branching out into literature and to other things. They've still got storytelling at the heart of them. They look like they're doing amazing things. Oxford is relatively new, and that's doing really interesting things. I suppose it's the ones that I was very familiar with, that because I was at the beginning of things that so Beyond the Border was just incredible, doing such exciting things, and sadly that's come to an end, and it's just I'm heartbroken about that. So as soon as you mentioned festivals, I find it hard to see past, because they were so innovative and just really exciting, and then it all kind of came to quite a sudden halt. Festival at the Edge is going on to new pastures, and I think it's really exciting to see what they do next. But they've had problems with sites, so and they've been at one site for the last few years, and they're having to move again. So I haven't heard where they're going to be next year. It is apparently definitely happening, but it's going to be a new site, and so that could be really exciting for them. But also it's difficult when you're picking up in a new place and it's a whole new layer of work. But I mean, there's lots of festivals here, and if anybody wants to come to Britain, there are lots of exciting storytelling festivals to come to. So I feel like I've been really down there, and I don't want to be down on the festival scene, but it is different after COVID, and I think and just running a festival has become so different to how it was when we started. And you have to be super on it with health and safety and risk assessments and insurance. And it's a big thing to run a festival. You can't just go, let's put the show on right here kind of thing. You can't. Right.
Not like in the old days when it's like, let's have a field, let's invite people and see what happens.
Yeah, which is how we started Fate, definitely. So you just can't do it now.
So one of the things I want to go back to, which is something that we taught when we first met at your home, and that's the traveller side of your storytelling.
I know, and I can't believe it took so long to get onto it.
We talked a lot about travellers when you and I were hanging out together, but I don't remember you saying that your family was travelling was in your blood, as it were, traveller was in your blood.
Well, I didn't know. That was the thing, is like I really didn't know for a long time.
Amy did not realise that her family had deep roots in the traveller tradition, and discovered this only after working with traveller storyteller Duncan Williamson. Irony there, I think. We get into Amy's work in the traveller's tradition and mythic work in part 2. It was an absolute pleasure to talk with Amy, which felt as much as a catch-up as an interview. We went off topic many times and talked about all sorts of things not related to story. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for being here. There are so many other places that you could be, and it means a lot that you're listening to this. To help me with this podcast, you can become a patron at Patreon by paying anything from $1 for an episode that you enjoyed, or a regular monthly subscription. In return, you get extras, early releases, and other exclusive content of my work. www.patreon.com/Simon Brooks. It takes around 4 hours or more to make each episode, not including getting in touch with folks and setting it all up, and the marketing before and after. I don't have advertisers. You can also donate on my website, simonbrooksstoryteller.com. And yes, that's me, Diamond Scree, the English fella and storyteller. I'm also on Instagram, Simon M. Brooks. and I'm also on Substack, and you can join me there as well. A shout out to Chris Jed for creating and recording the music for me and my podcast. His band is called Blackpool Mecca. Once again, I hope you enjoyed the show, and be sure to check out other episodes that you might have missed. Cheers!